So the first question is, what role can Bayer and specifically crop science play in helping with health and nutrition? Yeah, okay.
And Klaus is going to touch on healthy people, but also healthy planet, healthy.
Yeah.
And I'm going to talk.
Now wait for 30 seconds now. 30 seconds.
So, good morning, everybody, and welcome to this panel discussion in, I would say, quite a chilly Cape Town in South Africa here at ISF. So, look, thank you very much for all of you and also online for joining us at Bayer Crop Science. So, today we're going to talk about something that is very, very dear to us, which is our vision and our purpose, which is health for all and hunger for none. And in that context, we really want to talk about how we at Bayer Crop Science are providing access to more nutritious fruit and vegetables. And what we're going to do is we're going to have a discussion today with my guests here on the right-hand side. So before I introduce them, just to let you know, I'm going to moderate the session. My name is Ruth Matheson, and I work for the Bayer Vegetable Seeds business, and I head up Global Strategic Marketing. So perhaps I can ask Klaus and Ingi to introduce themselves. Maybe, Ingi, do you want to go first?
Sure. Thank you, Ruth. Good morning, everyone. I'm delighted to be here. My name is Ingi Dannenberg, and I'm responsible for the Global Vegetable Seeds business for Bayer.
Klaus.
Yes, good morning also from my side. Welcome to South Africa, but welcome to Africa. As I said, my name is Klaus Eckstein. I'm the head of crop science business in Africa.
Okay, so let me kick it off then. I think, for you, Klaus, maybe can you explain to everyone around what role do you believe that the crop science organization is playing in helping with health and nutrition?
Yeah, the big topic to talk about is of course the balance between what's happening in the field with farmers, and we see a lot of change happening in farming in the last 3 to 4 years. If you spoke to farmers like 5 years ago, everything was about yield. Today we're speaking about how do you make a profitable business going on, but also how do you manage risk on the farm. We're talking about climatic change, we're talking about stocking supply chains, we're talking about the climatic changes that we're seeing, so it's really managing risk on the farm. And last but not least, cash flow. I mean, farmers are looking for cash, and I'm looking that into extent as being very close to farmers and helping them to not only trust what we do, trust our brands, but really addressing that risk on the farm to produce more affordable, high quality food. On the other side, you will see the consumer and the consumer behavior experiencing high inflation. And that inflation, of course, goes into buying behavior. So what we sometimes see is maybe not going into the healthy way. So it's really going back to affordable, high quality food, but then also education. Really, how do we educate consumers, and specifically on the lower end of the value chain in these poorer communities where this skill is not there. And last but not least, not jeopardizing on the environment, really putting out there technology that is sustainable and that really doesn't jeopardize the future of future generations to come.
Yeah.
So we call it summarizing up, really benefiting farmers, consumers, and our planet.
Yeah, excellent, thank you. Ingi, what about you?
So if we look from the vegetables lens, fruit and vegetables, our purpose is to advance health and nutrition by allowing access to fruits and vegetables, but also appeal. It's two pieces. You have to ensure that you can have affordable food, reduce food waste through the system, ensure that there's a good return on investment for the grower to be able to be a sustainable production environment, but also be able to provide affordable food, as Klaus has just mentioned. But on the other side of that, you can create access, and in some cases, people don't want to eat it. So you need to ensure that things are tasty or convenient, or maybe they have the right texture. And that balance between access and appeal is a little bit of a tricky one to ensure that we can have all the characteristics that we need, because at the end of the day, it's not nutritious unless you consume it. So to us, that focus is around ensuring access and appeal.
And just on your point about access, Ingi, what do you believe that Bayer Vegetable Seeds are doing to support growers with the access to that?
Yeah, so if we take a look at the grower today, and Klaus mentioned it, economics are tough, the marketplace is tough, the climate challenges that they're dealing with are very, very harsh. So our goal is to be able to not only provide innovation that maybe has more resilience, better yield, disease resistance, et cetera, but it's not just to provide the vegetable seeds, it's also to provide the education and the knowledge transfer that goes along with it. Because unless a grower can really get a return on investment, then they can't afford to keep moving forward. And also that market linkage at the end of the day to be able to get where it needs to go. So Bayer's doing a lot in this space, particularly for the smallholder farmer. When we look at the professional farmer, the large-scale farmer, or maybe high-tech glasshouse, in that case, it's helping the growers understand how to market their produce, understand the nuances of the taste and texture maybe that we're going after, and that intersection between production characteristics, optimizing, then the consumer characteristics. So on two fronts, we're trying to support the growers at the end of the day.
Excellent, thank you. And Klaus, as we're here in beautiful Africa, tell me a little bit more about how do you believe that we're supporting growers specifically in this continent?
Well, and you spoke about just now about the two farmers, correct? On the one hand side, we're talking about that commercial farmer and the smallholder farmer. And both of that are as important to us in Africa. They're really, really being part of food production. And what we really are aiming for is increasing the uptake of the contribution of food produced in Africa for Africa. We're talking about growing populations in Africa. How do we translate it to firstly maybe commercial farmers? And I mean, here it's really, the first thing is about trust. Because I mean, it's a farming operations, it's large farming operations that are running on a high risk. It's really building that trust onto the farm. It's not about, in the old days, knowing a product. It's about how do you bring trust onto the farm in translating your solutions and managing risk and managing the profitability of the farm. It's that relationship that is so important to build up with these commercial farmers. Imagine a 4,000 hectare farmer is impacting communities, is impacting the environment out there, but it's also impacting the consumer.
Yeah.
On the other side, the environment around it is different. I mean, you're talking about maybe climate and soil. In South Africa, we have 7 different production sites for just the central parts of corn, soybean, cotton, sunflower crop systems. These farmers are amongst the most innovative farmers when it comes to digital technology. They want digital technology because it helps them to manage more with less. And I think this goes back into our sustainability approach. How do we farm more with less? Yeah. We're producing innovations in seeds, crop protection, and digital technology to exactly go into this, because it's a costly exercise. And I think going back into this, producing more with less, is really sustainable for both of us in building that relation, going a competitive farming industry going forward.
Yeah.
If you translate it back now to the smallholder farmer, I think it's the other side. You're not talking about maybe a good infrastructure. You're not talking about sustainable value chains, and you're not even talking about that last mile reach that is sustainable in Africa. So here it's about an ecosystem, building an ecosystem, enabling smallholder farmers to first talk about capacity creation, talk about how do we acquire skills to maybe change agricultural practices. A typical example is in Africa, we still see like three kernels of seed in a hole, because I'm trusting maybe the one is eaten up by an insect, the other one is not germinating, and the third one, maybe that's the one I put my trust on. When we talk with newer seed technology, that germination is high, that seed will emerge, but it's translating really the farmer skills into really more agronomic knowledge. And this is where we're building really capacity creation. We're talking about competency centers that we're building in specific countries in Africa, and really starting to close the loops around ecosystems where not only capacity is linked back to a last mile reach, somebody where I can buy and sell, but also talking about off-taking, talking about microfinancing, talking about how can I scale? How can I scale from 1,000 farmers to 1 million farmers? And in Africa, I mean, this year we have an aim to really reach 10 million farmers with really the technology, the input, and the skills that we're developing to uplift farmers, to uplift communities, and to really empower them to produce better food, to grow, but also to prosperity.
That's great. And you mentioned about digital technology. Any specific examples that Bayer are really providing to help support in this area of digital within Africa?
Well, there's two arms on the digital technology. One is our Climate Field View platform, where I mean, farmers specifically here in South Africa just say, go quicker, go more.
Yeah.
because it's so interesting to see what you do and how we can translate this. At the moment, we're talking more about the yield initiative at this point in time.
Yeah.
The whole commercial part is coming as we speak, so it's really a platform where farmers really are integrating information to not only manage a farm or a field, they're starting to manage a square meter of a farm, and this really goes into an interesting field. On the smallholder side, digital technology is more really to scale. So if we talk about knowledge and knowledge transfer, we can probably reach, millions of farmers, but we need to reach 100 million farmers.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's really how do you scale that technology? How do you share knowledge into platforms, and how do you link together communities through digital technology?
Okay. And obviously, I know within that, we've talked a lot here, and everything in here is about partnership, isn't it? Everything that we're talking about at ISF. So how do you believe that partnerships in SHE should be helping us in this kind of area?
Klaus mentioned ecosystems, and you can't create ecosystems individually. You have to work with partners, whether they're private sector, governmental, NGOs. We need to work with partners in order to be able to impact an ecosystem. And I'll give you an example of a partnership. We started with the International Financial Corporation and Netafim and Bayer to start something called Better Life Farming Centers. Now these are public-private opportunities for others to join in, where growers in smallholder rural marketplaces have an entrepreneurial opportunity to establish a center where there's quality seed, there's irrigation equipment, there's crop protection, there's agronomic information, and a chance to create an entrepreneur who's running and managing this business. Also financial support. So it's a hub for that grower to be able to be supported, but then at the end of the day, the whole community to be able to be elevated. And there's no way one entity is going to be able to deliver all those things. So it's important for us to be very strong in building those kinds of partnerships in order to create the ecosystems that Klaus was mentioning.
Okay, and Klaus, on your side, again, what do you believe about partnerships and how they can help support us in Bayer Crop Science?
Yeah, I mean, we are a company that's more than 150 years old, but alone we can't actually achieve it in Africa. It's really about partnerships. It's about being out there, and it's not about short-term partnerships. These partnerships go 5 years. I mean, we take a typical example in South Africa, Grain SA and the Pahama initiative that we supported for over the last 5 years, reaching thousands and thousands of smallholder farmers in South Africa. The objective is really how to make them contribute to increasing food basket requirements in South Africa. So it's a long-term partnership. In Africa, we have more than 40 partnerships that are really contributing to this ecosystem. I mean, we are not a bank, we are not an off-taker. We need to have partners that can help us to build capacity and to scale capacity.
Yeah.
So I think for us, this is fundamental in terms of really unpacking the supply of high quality food through the adoption of high quality inputs that we provide. On the other side, it's also reaching out to stakeholders, to public stakeholders, but to policymakers as well. If we look today into a South African smallholder farmer that has been using biotechnology for the last 20 years and really using it to benefiting the communities, I think there's a discussion to have in Africa, and it's really important to educate stakeholders, to have that strong conversation and saying, what's the benefit for these farmers? Remember, a smallholder farmer in Africa is also a business person.
Yeah.
They want to grow, they want to start a business, they want to be entrepreneurs. Let's grow that relationship. It's really worthwhile to building the continent of Africa.
Yeah, and then, I mean, obviously you talked about corn and soy, and then in the context of fruit and vegetables, I guess it's always a tricky one, for the smallholders to grow fruit and vegetables, in terms of their profitability. What do you think we as an industry can do to help encourage, more farmers to switch into fruit and vegetables as well?
For me, I mean, if you look into Africa and you speak to smallholders, they're generally not a single one crop farmer.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're really talking about staple food, they're talking about a legume, and they're talking about vegetables.
Yeah.
So if we're now starting to intensify agronomic production system, we spoke about the population of Africa yesterday. So intensification of agriculture, let's call it half a hectare of land, where we're producing predominantly maybe carbon and protein, will undoubtedly raise the question, how is that farmer going to look in 5 or in 10 years' time? They will start intensifying, because the crop production will increase in yield, and the diversification and value for the farmer is automatically going to come. So it is the marriage between a staple food, a protein food, and vegetables.
Yeah.
That is necessary to grow these
Yeah.
farmers and these communities.
No, it's great. And Ingi, again, thinking about the industry, how can we all work together to make nutritious food more accessible, more easily grown? You know, what are we talking, all our partners here today, what do you think that we should be doing differently?
I think on multiple fronts. If we take a look at the smallholder grower, one of the things there that's most mission critical is to ensure that we're creating an opportunity for them to be successful. And to be successful, it's through the whole value chain. It's reducing waste as produce is moved through. It's about ensuring that there's financing, ensuring that there's understanding of agronomic practices for things to be successful. If a grower takes a seed and then has to create a plant, and then from that plant, if they lose 50% of that, then the return on investment on that seed isn't there. So we also have plant raisers, for example, as part of the industry. All the pieces need to come into place in order for them to be successful. One of the things too that we're looking at doing to help the grower manage a multi-crop environment and also be able to get the most out of that is called an experience center. That we now have 4 experience centers in Kenya that are having corn, bean, and tomato rotation, also the use of crop protection products as an education platform to help support. And then if we have partners that can help us come through that experience center in order to give the education needed and the resources needed for the growers to be productive, that's even more of a benefit. I would say on the other front, when we're talking about large-scale professional growers that are servicing into marketplaces, the key there is to really understand the needs across the whole value chain. At the end of the day, if we don't address the challenges of production, for example, with disease resistance, or maybe dealing with new policy and new regulations, and ensuring that we're providing innovation that allows them to still be successful with changes in policy, if we don't do these things, then at the end of the day, there's either going to be produce made that the consumer doesn't want, or you're going to have increased waste or less yield, and at the end of the day, higher cost. And then they're going to move away from fruits and vegetables. When a consumer is going to the store, they have a pocketbook. And that pocketbook is there to feed their family. As they look at the elements that go to feed their family, there's calories that they need to consume, and then there's nutrients also that they need to consume. And if they have to spend all of their pocketbook on calories, then they're not going to be able to spend them on the fruits and vegetables. So the key here is to ensure that we create in partnership an ecosystem that allows us to get things grown effectively, as well as distributed and moved through the value chain into something that people actually want to eat.
And I know, Ingi, you and I have had a lot of conversations about what are consumers looking for now and what do they need for the future in terms of their health and nutrition, especially around vegetables. And we've obviously started to do quite a lot more of consumer research to try to understand that, to have a look at, in terms of the innovation coming back. Anything that you can say that you believe consumers are really looking for the future that you see, and then how we're supporting growers to get to that place?
Consumers are looking for convenience and taste. Those are key drivers, but cost effective as well. That has to be a play in the consumer's mind. So those 3 things come together. It's a little challenging for the grower. Yield and taste are a little tough to balance as far as characteristics. shelf life so that it makes it to the grocery store is a little tough to balance with taste as well and texture. If you have too much waste, it's going to be too expensive and not economical. So we need to ensure that we keep the price down, but from a consumer perspective, they are looking for taste and convenience as a major trend in the long run, as well as how is it grown? Is it sustainably grown? How is the grower looking at the planet? How are they looking at their inputs, et cetera? So we're also looking at utilizing technology to allow the grower to be able to capture how they're growing things and be able to then communicate to the consumer about their produce. So the consumer's looking at a variety of characteristics in the long run.
Okay.
We're also looking at digital technology to help give better recipes to growers in, for example, high-tech glasshouse production to balance those characteristics of agronomic and consumer-based characteristics. Because again, that's a tricky one to optimize.
No, that's great, thank you. And I know we as Bayer, obviously, we have lots of different business units. We have a pharma division and we have a consumer health division, and we're very proud of the fact we've got quite a lot of diversity within our business. We've been doing an initiative called the Nutrient Gap. Perhaps you just want to explain a little bit more about the nutrient gap, and again, how we're using that to support the health and nutrition, especially in underserved communities.
Absolutely. So this was started by our consumer health division. The Nutrient Gap was looking at opportunities to ensure that families are getting the nutrients they need for a healthy life. So this initiative started initially looking at supplements and how can we deliver supplements to underserved communities. By deliver, I mean more from the lens of information, knowledge, insights, but then also actually the supplements. So they began the Nutrient Gap initiative, focused on these communities with educational programs, but also outreach, and working with other partners in the industry to ensure that they could have access then to those supplements. What better partner for them to connect with than the vegetable seeds business and connect with providing nutrients through actual food consumption. So we've been working in collaboration now with consumer health and crop science to bring through those Better Life farming centers, as I mentioned, which are touching a broad rural community, education and access to nutrients through supplements, but also through vegetables.
That's great. And Klaus, I don't know if you want to talk, I believe there's a little bit about biofortified corn within the Nutrient Gap as well. Is there perhaps, you can talk a bit more about that?
Well, there's actually two initiatives there. The first one is, of course, it starts at the very fundament of what we are. We investing a lot into R&D and into innovation.
Yeah.
And we're having breeding programs in Africa for Africa to really develop new varieties, new hybrids that are really having a different spectrum in terms of what that commodity is constitute, like for example corn, and we're talking about corn here. So talking about higher zinc, iron contents, and really the content of the proteins as well, and in that, and the amino acids in that. But that is not enough, and that takes some time to really reach into Africa. So one is the breeding side that goes into our hybrids, that really goes into high quality seeds. The other one is really how do you go into off-taking? How do you really work together with partners that are then really enriching basically the maize meal and then providing a better staple food for farmers and of consumers in Africa. So that's an initiative that we have been running in various countries of Africa, and it's of course very important for us to continue that partnership journey going forward.
Yeah, no, great. And when you think about, Ingi, all of this, the essential nutrients that really are part of vegetables, what again should we be doing as an industry to really help consumers understand how nutritious and healthy our products are?
Yeah, I would say a couple of things there. One is understanding the value of nutrition in their life, and the other is helping to change behavior and wanting to actually consume fruits and vegetables. So that's twofold. And I think through awareness and educational campaigns, but also outreach through elementary schools, home gardens, different ways to expose the next generation to fruits and vegetables, I think is very, very important. Because if it becomes part of their day and part of their normal intake, it'll become a behavior and a habit. And I think that's one of the biggest challenges that we have, is really not only creating the appreciation of the fact that vegetables are nutritious, but to change the behavior of wanting to consume fruits and vegetables. So I think a lot of education and outreach to that next generation as an industry to increase consumption overall is really pretty vital.
No, absolutely.
A very important maybe experience I made in Africa. We spoke to a smallholder farmer from Zambia a couple of months ago, and the feedback we got is, did you know that the baking behavior of the hybrids that you have is the best that I've ever experienced in my life? So we can learn a lot from farmers and consumers in Africa to actually see what do they appreciate about what we do, and actually bring it back into our own, decision-making process, and really bring it back into Africa, because it's really talking about what is value for you.
Yeah.
And it brings that, not only the farmer, but also the consumer into the forefront.
No, that's great. So we're really now close to the end. We talked about the nutrient gap, and we've got just a really nice video to show. But before we do that, I just want to thank you both very, very much for your insight into the industry and what we're doing in Bayer Crop Science. And thank you to everybody out here and online. And we're just going to play this little video around the nutrient gap. Thank you all very much.
The path to health isn't always straightforward, but proper nutrition is a solid first step. From before we're born, through every stage of life, nutrition is the foundation of our well-being. That's why, through the Nutrient Gap Initiative, we're helping millions of people in underserved communities navigate nutrition and make progress toward better health. Since 2021, the program has been widening access to vitamins and minerals while offering health education to those who need it. And now, we're expanding this work by making fruits, vegetables, and grains more accessible too. We've helped millions walk across the nutrient gap, and the journey is just beginning.